At the beginning of his jump shot, Tyrese Haliburton lines up 1 foot at a time. His left comes down first as he shifts the ball to the right side of his head. Then his left elbow juts out as his right hand stays on the side of the ball. This is where our brain panics. Common teaching points sound alarms in our head. Things like elbow in, ball in front of your face, and of course, it has to be one fluid motion. Haliburton's form goes against every one of those bullet points, and halfway through it commits the cardinal sin of traditional shot mechanics. It includes a hitch. After he lines it up, the ball pauses for half a second with his wrists loaded and his knees slightly bent, almost like he's storing the kinetic energy instead of redirecting it. Then the next phase starts. In an instant, his entire upper body triggers all at once. His shoulders jump, his arms snap, and his wrists flick within the same 1/10 of a second. And then the ball hangs in the air with the arc of a cartoon rainbow. Usually this is where every member of the audience says no way, audibly protests the audacity of it all, only for it to fall through the net with enough velocity to shift the momentum of an entire building. No matter how many times we doubt it, dismiss it, or downright deny it, the shot still goes in. Every fanbase's expectations for rookies are tied to their team's history. People in Oklahoma City look at every draft pick like a coin flip that will bring them either a star or a strong contributor. But in Sacramento, they don't have that kind of optimism. The people who've spent the last 20 years cursing Dick Bavetta and watching old Chris Webber highlights have been conditioned to assume the worst and hope for something a little bit better. They've been burned by too many highly touted prospects to be hopeful each time a new young player entered the building. But 2020 felt a little different. Going into the draft, Tyrese Haliburton was expected to be a top 5 pick, but thanks to a weird looking shot in a COVID-shortened season at Iowa State, he fell to 11th. Kings fans weren't screaming from the rooftops or anything, but it felt like a nice break for a franchise desperately in need of one. Unfortunately, there was still one issue. Sacramento already had a young point guard. De'Aaron Fox had been there for a few years now, and he had won the fan base over. The good news was there were some analysts who believed the two could play together in some kind of hybrid, wide-open offense. But before any experimental plans were rolled out, the Kings would have to wait as Haliburton worked through a fractured left wrist. He spent the beginning of the season sitting on the end of the bench as the fanbase speculated on what kind of impact he could make. It was the initial pause that forced everyone to move him to the back of their minds. But finally, after 2 months of waiting, it was time. His first game came 2 days before Christmas against the Denver Nuggets, and all things considered, it was highly encouraging. 12 points, 4 assists, and 0 turnovers for a point guard getting his first taste of NBA action. The shot was absolutely as weird as advertised, and his movements seemed to oscillate between floaty hesitations and sudden bursts, but it worked. And as the months went by, it kept working. Haliburton ended the season as a shockingly efficient rookie floor general. He shot over 40% from 3, ran the offense when Fox left the floor, and hardly ever turned the ball over in spite of being a lucrative passer. No one exactly knew what they had yet, but they knew he was good enough to finish 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting and build up some actual enthusiasm for the next year of Kings basketball. Heading into 2022, the fans wanted to see more of Haliburton alone, more of Haliburton and Fox together, just as much of the new showrunner as possible to understand what the team's future could look like. And through the first half of the season, that's what they got. At the beginning of the year, Haliburton started at the shooting guard position right next to Fox, and it looked intriguing. The team didn't win many games, but the backcourt was dynamic and oddly complementary. Haliburton led the team in assists, Fox led them in points, and together they carried the offensive load for the Kings. But on January 21st, Fox went down with an ankle injury, forcing Haliburton to take over the point guard duties. And the results were, well, interesting. In his first game at the 1, Haliburton dropped 24 and 12 against Giannis and the Bucks. Then he put up 38 on the 76ers a few days later. And finally, he gave the Thunder 12 points and 17 assists. For anyone, those were impressive performances, but for a second-year player who was filling in for an all-star, they were eye-opening. Kings fans were opening their hearts now, emotionally investing in a future where Tyrese Haliburton and De'Aaron Fox played together for years to come. And right as they did that, the news broke. Domantas Sabonis was on his way. Tyrese Haliburton was heading to Indiana, and the rapid-paced backcourt became nothing more than a short-lived dream. One day, good things will happen to Kings fans. One day. The Pacers fans didn't have the same ingrained misery as the people of Sacramento, but at the same time, it had been a rough couple years for Indiana. The Paul George era ended on bad terms, and right as Victor Oladipo seemed primed to be the next Midwest icon, his career was derailed by a series of devastating injuries. Since then, the front office had been waiting for some new potential star to build the next iteration of the Pacers around, and there was a growing belief that they found that guy. In his first half season with the team, Haliburton was electric. He was one of their best scorers thanks to a deceiving first step and that bizarre jump shot that just didn't miss. But the real headline was the playmaking. Haliburton put up nearly 10 assists per game through the second half of that season, and next year, he proved that none of that was a fluke. With an offseason to get acclimated to his new environment and grow his game even further, Tyrese Haliburton officially broke out. He averaged 20 and 10 over the course of the season on elite percentages, and on top of that, he wasn't turning the ball over. It wasn't a quirk or a low volume enabled trick anymore. That Indiana offense wasn't great yet, but it was fast. Top 5 pace in the league kind of fast. And teams that move at that speed turn the ball over. It's a basic law of offensive exchange. But Haliburton was finding ways around it, sprinting up and down the floor, tossing no-look passes left and right, and somehow avoiding the inevitable pitfalls that come with that play style. For the first time in a while, Pacers fans were genuinely excited, waiting on pins and needles to see that team after another year of development with their new all-star point guard at the helm. And then it began with enough confusion to stall their momentum. There were highs. Indiana went on an impressive run through the in-season tournament and came one game short of winning the whole thing, but the lows were just as resounding. There was a 51-point loss to Boston in the opening week of the season, and a game in December where they gave up 151 points to the Clippers. By the time Christmas rolled around, they were 14 and 14. Not good or bad, not moving forward or backwards, just stalling, giving their entire fan base anxiety as they kept pushing forward. But in the next couple months, they started figuring it out. The defense was still a mess, and it would be all season, but the offense was outstanding. A well-oiled machine that raced by everyone and mentally outpaced their opponent in every game. And at the end of the year, that blistering attack was enough to punch their ticket to the playoffs. At this point, they had already surpassed expectations. A tough round 1 exit to the Bucks would have been perfectly fine, and a single series win sounded like the best case scenario until the playoffs actually tipped off. To start, they caught a little bit of a break. Giannis Antetokounmpo was out for their series against Milwaukee, and Damian Lillard missed 2 games. They won convincingly more often than not, but it wasn't the bold announcement everyone was hoping for. Then they went to New York, fell down 3-2, and pulled off what should have been an emphatic second-round comeback that put the basketball world on notice. But there were more holes to poke. Julius Randle didn't play a game in that series, and OG only played in 3 of the 7 games. The Knicks were a battered and bruised approximation of the team they were supposed to be. Finally, they were in the conference finals against the team that blew them out by 50 points at the beginning of the season, and this time, nothing went their way. The team fell in a close one to start the series and got blown out in Game 2 before Tyrese Haliburton went down with a hamstring injury. The Celtics ended their season in 4 games, and even though it was closer than a sweep indicated, nobody cared. It was way easier to call them frauds and move on than it was to figure out everything that allowed them to get this far. According to the initial expectation, that run with that roster never made sense anyways. No one outside of the Midwest expected Indiana to go back to the conference finals in the next season, but people had learned. They knew that offense was explosive and Haliburton was a top-tier playmaker, and because of that, they were at least contenders in the East, even if most people considered them minor ones at best. But when the season actually started, there was an issue. The Pacers had actually gotten worse. Haliburton didn't look the same after his injury, and his percentages were suffering because of it. The shooting efficiency that was such a huge part of his unique offensive arsenal wasn't there, and without it, the Pacers as a whole didn't make sense. They started off 10-15, and everyone who discounted last year's playoff run took an early victory lap. But soon after that early season slump, Indiana turned things around. Haliburton rounded back into form, and they found ways to consistently get stops on defense. When the regular season came to a close, they had racked up 50 wins and played themselves into the 4th seed in the East. But even that resounding turnaround wasn't enough to correct a narrative that had been so widely believed, because the appearance didn't match the reality. Even now, Haliburton didn't feel like a traditional star. His shot was still weird, his movement was still odd, and he didn't align with the general expectations for what a go-to guy should be. When the playoffs started, that remained the consensus among the fans, and soon we heard the same thing from the players. Right in the middle of their first round series against Milwaukee, The Athletic released its annual poll voted on by players that includes a number of questions, but the one that got the most attention was the one that gets the most attention every year. Who is the most overrated player in the league? And this time, the number one answer was Tyrese Haliburton. In the press conferences, Haliburton acted like it was no big deal, but on the floor, crazy things started happening. It began with a quick crossover to get by Giannis into a series-ending layup. The crowd erupted. His dad nearly got into a fistfight with Giannis after the game, and everyone applauded. But for now, the perception around him remained the same. Then they moved on to a round 2 matchup with a 64-win Cavs team, and at the end of a shocking Game 2 comeback, Haliburton was on the free throw line, down 2 with 10 seconds to go. He missed, got his own rebound, danced around Ty Jerome, and left the city of Cleveland completely silent. Indiana would go on to end that series in 5. Just like that, they were back in the Eastern Conference Finals, this time staring back at an old franchise rival, the New York Knicks. Game 1 was in Madison Square Garden with Spike Lee courtside and Reggie Miller himself calling the game. It was a Broadway moment, a stage for stars to establish themselves as undeniable superstars. And for the most part, people were still watching everyone else. Jalen Brunson seemed like the pick to stamp himself as a top player in the league, and through the first 47 minutes, it looked like he was on his way to doing that. Then Aaron Naismith tapped into a higher state of consciousness. Indiana marched back in the most improbable fashion, and then the moment arrived. Haliburton with the ball, down 2, with final seconds ticking off, a frantic drive, a quick retreat, and then the most dramatic shot imaginable to win the game, send the game to overtime. A few choke signs and a couple Pacer avalanches later, and Indiana was on to the finals after tearing through the Eastern Conference, thanks in large part to a long compilation of iconic playoff shots from their star point guard. And in Game 1 of the finals, against what was supposed to be a basketball superpower, he did it again. Haliburton drove to the right, stopped just inside the 3-point line, and buried another crowd-silencing dagger to start the series. That poll felt laughable now, utterly ridiculous and entirely nonsensical, and honestly, it didn't feel like he was done disproving it. That series kept going back and forth, with both teams trading punches all the way to Game 7 in Oklahoma City, and as soon as the ball tipped off, it felt like we were in for something special. Haliburton nailed 1 3, then another. Just over halfway through the first quarter, he had 9 points, and it didn't seem like the hot shooting was going anywhere. Man, we really wish it stopped there, because right after that, right after what looked like the last crescendo of a historic run, came to an abrupt stop. Haliburton had been playing through a calf strain since Game 5, and he was visibly hampered in Game 6. But in the final contest, he put all of that to the side, only for the game to pull the rug out from under him, right as he was building what could have been another all-time playoff moment. The announcers, the fans in the arena, and everyone else who tuned in felt sick. And to this day, remembering that moment leaves you with a queasy feeling. The worst part about all of this is right now, that's where the story stops. It's another pause, another hitch in a career filled with them, and it's easily the most disheartening and unfair of them all. But let us say this, if anyone is under the misguided assumption that Game 7 in OKC was the end, snap out of it right now. Remember the interruptions in Sacramento, the reoccurring bumps in the road in Indiana, even the pause right at the beginning of a 1 in a million shot form. Tyrese Haliburton is used to hitches. He's been dealing with them since he started playing the game, but eventually the hitch passes. And sure enough, the shot goes in. Please don't forget that. Otherwise, we'll end up with another egregiously misguided pull. And lessons always hurt twice as bad the second time you learn them.